Casual Magic has been sponsored by Quiver, maker of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine deck holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their website for 10% off your order. We're also sponsored by Architect, the premier site for hosting your decks on the internet. I love them and they love me, and it seems like a good reason for you to use them. You can also support Casual Magic directly by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/Shivam. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam, Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Architect and Quiver and by my patrons at patreon.com/Shivam. Today I'm super excited, like legit, genuinely super excited to be talking to one of the most foundational people in my Magic journey, if I'll be honest, of like folks who didn't directly teach me the game. Like, your articles are the reason that I'm sitting where I'm at. So I'm talking today to Bennie Smith, who is a longtime columnist at SCG at Star City Games, who has been writing about Commander since before it was called Commander, who wrote the literal book on Commander that I read many times when I was first starting to get into this game, and who's like right up there with, I don't know, Adam Styborski, Bruce Richard, and like a couple other folks as like just the pantheon of and Anthony Alongi, how could I forget him? As part of like the pantheon of what it meant to be a casual writer or to focus on casual Magic. So it's like talking to one of the literal godfathers of the casual format. Hi, Bennie. I'm so glad to finally get to talk to you, man.
I'm really glad to get to talk to you too, and thank you for those kind words. Basically, means I've been around for a long time writing.
Look, man. My hair was black when I was reading you first.
Right. Mine too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like Emma Handy once accused me of gassing up all of my guests all the time and being like, oh man, you just don't know how to say anything bad about anybody. I'm like, well, look, if there's nothing bad to say, I'm not going to say anything bad. And honest to God, dude, like your articles helped me understand, like, helped me first off realize that like when I was first starting to get into real Magic, like, I mean, I don't mean when I started playing back in the dawn of whatever, but when I came back to Magic around 2011, 2012, and I was looking for any information I could absorb and read and just, take in, like I would read the Mothership religiously, and I would read like any other content that I could find religiously. And like 80% of it is, I was in this tournament and this is the metagame and this is a sideboard and this is how I played against LSV or this is, whatever. And like, that's all fun to read, but that's not like useful to me. Like, it's not like I'm not going to be jamming with my buddies and like being like, oh yeah, man, I need to have the new, like, the new like mono red mirror, like tech or whatever the hell. I don't even know. But then like reading folks like you and Alongi and Richard and like the other folks who were doing the super casual stuff on Daily MTG and on like, Star City and Channel Fireball and things, it was basically giving me the opportunity to play the way we did in the playground when I first started playing in a more formal setting. And I cannot speak highly enough of that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun in those early days writing about all that stuff. And when I first started playing Magic, I came into it as a multiplayer format from the very beginning. So like basically it was me and my D&D buddies picked up the game. I was the one that discovered it and sort of drug one by one some of the other guys into playing it.
When was this?
This was early 1994. So yeah, it was there was still Arabian Night packs and unlimited packs on the store shelves.
Oh man!
So there wasn't a lot of them. I mean, like they sold out quickly, but it was pretty wild.
I started with the dark, so I'm right there. Like when I started, Legends packs were still like whispers in the distance of this thing that existed, and right. Like the dark was what we had, and everybody's like, "Man, these cards kind of blow." It's like. Well, I mean, nobody said that because we were all still just so excited to have anything at all. And Maze of Ith and Blood Moon just ruled. But like, man, side tangent right off the top is like, Maze of Ith used to be one of the most important cards in Commander, and now if
Right.
you see it, you just know that that player is old.
Right. Yeah, I've actually made a commitment to try to play more Maze of Ith recently. Like
The card
some of the
rules, and people don't understand.
yeah.
It's so
Well,
good.
people are coming back around to like combat, right? Like
Yeah,
for a
I
while,
guess that's true.
I think people had gotten away from it. You know, they were more like, let's dirtle around, not die, and then like
And then just build my
execute my
engine and
combo
go.
and I'll execute my combo and kill everybody. But like now, people are you know saddling up a big creature and giving it double strike and like swinging into the command zone. So I think Maze of Ith might be due for a
You
comeback.
know what? Like when reconnaissance and like Gust Cloak dudes are suddenly good again, that's how you know that we've come back around to old school Magic.
Right.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. It's like it's weird because I love playing big turtle engines that I build up and then blow off and make this huge combo and stuff. They're super fun. But when I think about the decks that I love the most in Commander, they're like literal, just slow, steady, aggressive, turn them sideways and just start plinking at people all day long, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, that's the magic I want to do. I just want to be swinging into the red zone, and everybody is so afraid to block. They're like, oh
Right.
no, if I lose my utility creature and I lose my combo, what am I going to do?
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
mean, that's how we used to win the multiplayer games that I first started playing Magic with. It was all combat.
oh yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Well,
I don't remember anybody having some kind of combo kill. It was all chip shots and politics, and trying to take one guy out if he's getting too big for his britches,
I
and
don't know,
it was
man.
a
I
lot of
remember the days of Ashnode's Altar, Enduring Renewal, Fireball, and like just Blinking Spirit or some garbage that you're just looping for, or like Ornithopter that you're just looping
yeah,
forever and just hit the whole table for 300 or something stupid.
yeah,
But yeah, so you started in 1994. Multiplayer was not the way that like Garfield wanted us to play. Obviously, his rules were all made for like 1v1. But it feels like all of us who started back then have stories of like, yeah, we just decided to play multiplayer. There were
right,
four of us, and it was like, why don't we just all play together? Free for alls.
yeah, and we really leaned into the anti aspect of the
Oh,
game that
really?
was in the beginning. I mean, we would throw in extra cards, talk trash to each other, and we played all the anti cards, right? The
Mm,
like what was the one where you
jeweled
flip a
birds.
there's jewel birds, and there was a card that lets you flip an extra anti card over and draw seven
Oh yeah,
for
contract
for
from
one.
below.
Yes,
The literal
I mean,
strongest card in the history of Magic is like,
right,
you know, everybody's like, sometimes when I talk to new players, I'm like, what do you think is the strongest card in Magic? And they're like, oh yeah, Black Lotus, Ancestor. I'm like, no, bro. The strongest card in Magic is a one black mana sorcery that lets you draw seven.
right. Yeah, it was crazy.
I play a lot of Chandelar, and I've got a lot of contract from below decks, and it's kind of broken in half when you can just at any point in time for the cost of whatever your next top card is, draw seven and just be like, yeah,
Right.
I'm
Well,
good.
especially because if you're drawing seven, you're probably going to win back your ante, right? So,
Exactly. Who cares what that anti card is if I
right,
kill you?
right.
I mean,
Yeah,
but anti cards were just, there were some of them were real dumb. Like, yeah, I'm going to just switch the ant. There was like one, I think it was a demonic attorney or one of these ones where it's like you can switch cards in the ante with something from your hand. And then
right,
you're just like, I'm just going to take your thing and then concede and leave. Bye. It's like, what the heck? That's just theft, man. That's just straight theft.
right.
Um, but
Well,
yeah, so
we were always pretty good about trading it back if it was like a cherished card that our friend just lost an ante. Like we're like, hey, make me an offer with something else, and we'd make a trade or whatever, or like, hey, let me play this for a week or two, and then I'll trade it back to you. That kind of
basically,
thing.
and like, sometimes we would look at it and it's like, if I flip over a Lana War and you flipped over a Taiga, we would probably just let you reshuffle and do it again. Like, that's not a fair match.
Right.
But yeah, so
Though of course,
what?
Tigers back then were like $15
Yeah,
cards.
like, hey, dude, you know what, dude? Taiga made your Kurt Apes work. And Kurt
Right, they
Ape's
did.
turn one Kurt Ape off the Taiga is no joke.
Right.
It's like, okay, maybe it is a joke, but look, it's still
Right.
it mattered to us, damn it.
It did. It did for sure.
So what then, like you said you came from D&D, so obviously you already have the idea of playing with your group in mind, right? Like, so did you
Right.
play single player Magic a lot of, or were you mainly focused in those days on just hanging out and jamming multiplayer games?
Well, like I started hearing about tournament magic, and it was intriguing to me. I like games of all sorts, board games and card games, like classic, hearts and bridge and spades and stuff like that. So there was that competitive side of me that was interested in the tournament scene, and not many of my casual friends were. So I sort of ventured out on my own and started playing some of the early like Type 2 tournaments and stuff like that.
Type
But
2.
I would go and play in local tournaments, and but then I'd also go play group games with my friends. So like from the beginning, almost from the beginning, I started sort of exploring both areas.
Mm.
And I when I first started writing for Star City Games, I was mostly talking about tournament magic because that was kind of what everybody wanted at the time. But over time, I would interject some of my casual play and some of my writing, and then over time, when like EDH started blowing up, some of the editors were like, "Hey, you should spend more time on this EDH."
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. I don't want to like fast forward all the way into it because that's not fun. But
Okay.
like, because I know that you at some point in time were even like you'd like played in states and in nationals and actually gotten kind of far, didn't you? Like
I
when you
never I
were
never made it to nationals, but I did win states one year for Virginia, and I
back
made
when we
top,
had states.
right, yeah, and made like top 8 several times at states, like probably four
Yeah,
or five
so like
times.
you actually had 2 player bona fides. You weren't just
Yeah,
fun times.
yeah.
Sometimes,
Winning that one championship was very exciting to me because I could never get that PTQ win. Like I could never get to the Pro Tour, and like all the big Magic writers at the time were like Pro Tour players.
yeah,
So
right,
like to me, I wanted that competitive bona fides to sort of, you know,
right.
make a splash.
At least that way you could say, "Look, I also can play Magic."
Right. Exactly.
I mean, dude, you have no idea how many times people come up to me when I'm playing against them in one-on-one Magic, and I just like shellac the floor with them, right? Like, and they're just sitting there going, like, "I didn't know you could play like just real Magic." I'm like,
Right.
bro,
Right.
I play a lot of casual fun time Magic, but I can also like run a pod when we're drafting. It's like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
um,
I mean, at the very least, the amount of longevity in the game, you learn things, right?
right,
Like,
exactly. So, how did you get involved with writing for Magic? Because you started very early.
yes.
Like, when
Well,
did you start
like I
writing
said,
for?
well, so early on in Magic, like I was saying, I was getting kind of interested in tournament Magic, and
Mm,
but like most of my local friends weren't interested in that, so I ended up stumbling across Usenet sites on the
mm,
internet that had Magic strategy. There was like one dedicated to Magic strategy, and there was people like Mike Flores and Jamie Wakefield and uh, you know
yeah,
Adrian Sullivan and just all these different early Magic writers.
legends.
And yeah, and they were writing really cool tournament reports and strategy articles. And I was kind of like, hey, I can do writing. So I'm going to start writing some of this stuff too. And so um, that's kind of how I started, sort of making a little bit of a name for myself in writing about Magic.
When was that? Do you know, or do you remember when you started?
Like, well, so Star City Games kind of scooped me up in 1999. So
1999. What?
yeah,
The web,
yeah, it was
like, okay, the web barely existed in 1999. I mean, no,
right.
that's not true. It was pretty solid, but we still had like separate email programs at that point.
Yeah,
But I didn't even realize that SCG was a thing in 1999.
yeah. Well, like I think it was like 1998. There was like the Magic Dojo. Do you remember the Magic
Yes, I
Dojo?
remember the dojo.
So they would scrape like tournament reports from the different Usenet groups and aggregate them on their site, and then eventually I think they got people that were actually submitting stuff directly to them. So like
The
whenever
old
I
days
would
of
get
just
one of
copy paste somebody else's thing.
right, so like whenever I would get scooped up or one of my posts would show up on the dojo, it was like super exciting, right? I was like, whoa, this is so cool. So I think, it was probably like 96, 97 is probably when I started writing for the use groups. And then basically when Star City Games decided to provide written content for their store, they kind of went onto the dojo and scooped up a bunch of people. And so like they grabbed Jamie Wakefield and um, some other names that are kind of escaping me, but
Yeah,
I was one of the ones that they got too. I think, but probably because Star City Games is Virginia based, and I'm from Virginia here, and so I actually knew Pete and their
that helps.
right
That helps
the
a
first
lot, man.
the first editor for Star City Games was a gentleman named Omid Dariani.
Oh, I know him.
So I knew Omid and I knew Pete. So I think probably the fact that I was a writer from Virginia and I knew those guys helped me slide on in there too.
Man, Omid, I haven't thought about him in a long time. He actually interviewed me to work at Upper Deck once in 2008 or something, 1,000 years ago. But yeah, like, because I had left D&D and I had left Magic at that point and moved back to like D&D and other things. So I was only reading like the articles on the mothership. This is one of those weird things about me that I don't understand. Like, I did not play Magic for a long time, but I read and kept up with Magic because it was consistent and on the internet and showing up when I had free internet in college and I just had nothing else to do, I guess. Like, I played Magi Nation and L5R. Why was I reading Magic websites? I don't even know. But like, when you think about it, you start in 94, 95, and you're by night, like 4 years later, you're already writing like articles for them, like for a website, and you never stopped. Like, I just decided to Google and see what your earliest one that's currently on SCG is, just because, like they delete their archives every now and again. The earliest thing you're here is January 6th, 2000.
Right.
What in the hell? Like, the blossoming of green card advantage, a thing that green is desperately like drowning in right now.
Right. It doesn't need help anymore. That's for sure.
Oh man, the old decks.
But it took a long time to get green good in competitive formats.
Oh yeah, green was like it's weird because there was this huge disconnect that green was like the most fun thing for casuals to want to play. It's like big dumb stompy creatures, but then you would look at all the competitive games and they're all like just like mono blue, blue black, blue red, just like, I'm going to discard your whole hand and then draw 300 cards and right. We're just going to stare at each other for an hour and a half and nothing's going to happen. And the green player's like, hey guys, I'm also here. And they're like, no, shut up. You're not.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And man, I always loved green, like from the very beginning. The first rare I opened up was a Force of Nature, like the big Swamp Thing looking art, art from that very beginning. It was like an unlimited.
It's 8/8 for 5. It's got 4 green upkeep.
Right. And it tramples and it does 8 damage. It's huge.
But if I Stone Rain one of your forests, you were taking 8 damage too.
Right.
Oh
yeah,
man,
it was very risky.
God, dude, I'm just reading this article while you're talking to me, and it's like, you were playing Squirrel Prison with Opposition and Treachery against people who were playing Recurring Nightmare and Oath of Ghouls. I'm like, what the hell magic is this?
Right. That was some wild Magic days.
Oh my God. So when you started actually writing more casual stuff, how did you decide to approach it? Like, you've done this for a long time. Like, you've seen casual Magic go from being just a thing that people who pick up the game or just having fun in multiplayer are doing to being like the most prominent and formal way to play. You've seen like our game change so much over the past 20 something years. how did you approach writing this versus like writing a tournament report's easy. This person won. These are the decks you did. But like talking about the kitchen table is a different world entirely.
Right. Well, uh, what's kind of interesting, I think, about writing about casual Magic is that a lot of a lot of importance goes with how you're feeling, right? Like what are you getting out of this other than just winning, right? Like,
Hmm.
are you do you build like little mini games into your deck so that you can like have some fun and check off some wins, even if you're not going to win in the end? Um, or I feel like there's different places of importance when you're writing about casual Magic than competitive, right? Like competitive is very focused. There's only there's only a certain subset of cards that are going to show up in your competitive decks.
Hmm.
Whereas Commander, or an EDH, or even before that formalized format, like whatever's your
If the
favorite
card has
card,
been
and
printed, somebody's going to play it.
right, like that was one of the things that really appealed to me about EDH from the very beginning, was that Highlander nature,
Hmm.
of all you need to do is open the one card or trade for the one card, and then that's all you need for your deck, right? Whereas, like, if you're playing tournament and you crack open a Thoughtseize, now you got to go chase down three more
Right?
Thoughtseizes,
It's
and
like,
that's going to cost you a fortune. And so, like,
yeah,
that
I
that was
think
what
that
was appealing. Yeah,
like the thing that appealed to me was that you could really get away with playing cards I have dot deck, right? Like
right,
I've got this Mahmoudi Jin and these two Sarah Angels and a couple of walls. Okay, I got a deck. Let's go. And like, I remember when I came back and I started looking into like Commander, and my friend's like, "Yeah, you can play Soul Ring," and I'm like, I can just play Soul Ring again. It's okay."
right,
And like Basalt Monolith and all these just my old decks can work again. What the hell? It
right,
was it was so like because I was so used to just you play the deck in standard, it rotates, it's gone forever, you never think about this. But now it's like, oh look, all those cards you love still exist and work, yay.
right,
um so how did you find I guess Elder Dragon Highlander?
right.
Yeah.
Well, so to go back to Omid,
Mm.
Omid also used to write for Scry magazine. Do you remember
Oh,
Scry magazine?
of course I remember Scry magazine. Scry and
Okay,
Inquest, man, they were what we had.
so he left Scry magazine and picked me to take his spot there as a contributing editor for them.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so I wrote for Scry magazine for about 8 years, concurrent with
Whoa.
all the other stuff that I was doing, which was a lot of fun. Like writing for a Magic magazine was super super fun. And so at one point they had a column called Ask the Judge, and Sheldon Menery was one of the judges that we used to answer questions. So people would email questions to Scry, and then they would forward those to me. I would compile a bunch of questions that I thought were interesting, and then I'd send them to Sheldon, and Sheldon would answer them, and then I would, turn it into an article for Scry magazine. So I got to know Sheldon that way,
Mm.
and when he moved to Virginia, um, we got to be friends because we would bump into each other locally quite often. Like he would come in and judge a lot of the Star City Games events,
Yeah.
and I would go, and sometimes I'd help run the events with Pete if he needed some help, or I would play in them if he didn't need my help. And so I would get so I got to know Sheldon, and then I started hearing about this format that he and the judges were playing. And
Mm.
as someone who had a background in playing multiplayer, I was very interested in it. So that was kind of how I heard about it. And of course, he wrote a couple of articles about it on Star City, and so that's how I learned what exactly the format was.
Mm.
And I just started. I got some of my local friends who were multiplayer fans to read up on the rules, and we had like a local EDH game, and everybody had a blast. So that was kind of the start of it.
Do you remember what your first commander was?
It was Rith the Awakener.
Ah, classic.
So classic dragon. It was an elder dragon.
Yeah, it fits the
So
needs, man. Like
Yeah.
And Rith is actually probably even still playable. That card, like, I feel like those Invasion era Elder Dragons just don't get the kind of respect that they used to, or like
Right.
nobody thinks about them anymore. Probably because they got those weird color requirements and stuff. But
Right.
I don't know. I'm old school enough that if it says Elder Dragon, I am already 100% on board. I don't
I
need more
agree
than
with
that.
you.
I'm
I
like,
agree
dude,
with you.
when they started making Elder other things, I was a little disappointed. I'm like, you can't do that. Elder Dragon is important. Elder Dinosaur,
Right.
no, not, can't do that.
Yeah.
Um, but like, you went ahead eventually and wrote a whole ass book on Commander. Like, that
Right.
was when I discovered that for the first time. I was like, wait, it was like when I discovered Patrick Chapin writing his book. I was like, people write books on Magic. What does that even mean? And then like when I looked at your book, and I was like, oh my god, this is like teaching me how to actually do the things. And I found it very helpful and very kind of like edifying to see it written out in like a just kind of like a very easy to understand way of like, this is the ideas behind deck construction, this is what it means, these are what the things you need, it's like stuff that we take for granted now. It was
Right.
like, because a lot of us, when we first started encountering a 100 card deck and you're trying to build one, you have no idea, like it doesn't make
Right.
any sense, it doesn't fit any of the rules. It's like, okay, I've got to get, how many lands do I know, how many lands to put in a limited deck, how many lands do I put in a commander deck, how many
Right.
like card draws, but like
Right.
so many of my stupid first decks were like, I'm taking this 2 card combo and then I'm going to build around it. And I forgot that there's 98 other cards that have to do something. And like, you may never see these 2 cards together. Um,
Right.
yeah. So what brought that about? How did you even get from I'm writing articles to I'm going to write a book?
Well, so I started. The more I played EDH, the more I wrote about it. Even
Mm,
though most of what I was writing at the time still was like competitive Magic, or what I considered casually competitive. Like I was never a hardcore competitive Magic, but like I would try to win tournaments or at least do well in tournaments with some wacky decks or whatever that I was making.
mm,
But I started peppering in more of that content, and as the format kind of blew up, as Sheldon and the rules committee were sort of evangelizing the format, um, I started writing more and more about it, and then I started getting a lot of feedback from people who were like asking me questions. Oh, there's a visitor behind me. Her name is Fiona. Hi,
cats.
Fiona. um, so people kept asking me about it, and like sometimes I would point them back to articles I had written before, and then they would go, "Okay, well that was a year ago. So do you have any updated ideas?" And as as time went on, and more people started playing um, EDH, they were hungry for more content, right? So I instead of pointing people back to what I'd already written, I started thinking maybe I should compile a lot of what I had written earlier as just a series of different articles into an actual cohesive book that might be, and update it for the time, and then make it a fun read with the idea that it would be sort of a way to so for anybody could kind of jump start their way into the format. Read the book. It's not a huge lift, like it's not thousands of pages or anything,
Yeah.
but like read it, get motivated, get excited, learn some things hopefully, and then be able to jump in and have a good time. So that was kind
Mm.
of the impulse. I kept getting people wanting to ask, they kept asking me questions, and I kept feeling bad about pointing them. Well, I wrote about this last year, like I kept trying to point them to previous articles, but like, who wants to keep, you know, pouring through old articles and stuff like that, when you can just grab an ebook and read the whole book.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays people will be like, "You want me to read a book? What the hell, man?"
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
but
It's
yeah, no, I
definitely
found
moved
I found it
past it.
really just helpful to have it all kind of in one place, like that. And like I look at your book and I look at Reed Duke's series that he did on the Mothership on like Magic 101 on how to build a deck and how to draft and how to like handle stand all all this sort of things. It's like we take all this stuff for granted, having been playing since the dawn of time. But when you are a newcomer to this game, it is daunting. It is insanely challenging to come up with a
Yeah.
way to enter into this format, especially now that everybody's starting to jump into Commander, where there's no like barriers on what can happen. Like at least in Standard, you're like, okay, look, you've only got these, let's say, 300 cards to care about. In Commander, it's like you've got these 35,000 cards to care about.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Um,
So,
so,
what one thing I would like to just do a quick shout out is the people that helped me pull that book together. So I reached out to my friend MJ Scott, and I asked her to sort
MJ
of
is
shepherd.
cool.
Yeah, she's great. She's great. So I asked her to basically. I said, I don't really need an editor so much as I need a producer. Like I need somebody to help pull this together, pull in people that from the artistic side of things, and she actually pulled in James Arnold to do the graphic design of the book. And James Arnold went on to become a really prominent Magic designer. Like he was instrumental for some of the new frames that Magic started doing, kind of away from the old classic frames and sort of making some of those interesting new frames and stuff.
Yeah,
So I love that he went on past, just doing an ebook and just doing some really amazing artistic stuff for Magic.
okay. So I want to hear it from you. Like, why should we play casual Magic? Why should we play multiplayer Magic? What is the draw for you? What keeps you going now, 25 years in?
Well, the beauty of Magic in general, I think, for even competitive players, is how it refreshes itself every expansion. Um, Granted, there seems to be more and more expansions now, so it's almost like too much of a good thing. But like I love, and Commander is a format that's wide open to the beginning of time, right? So each set that comes out, it sort of refreshes the whole Magic experience all over again. At least for me, like you'll see a card and you'll be like, oh man, I remember this card back in the dark, and that's going to be kind of cool to play with this new card. So one of the things that I used to do was study screenwriting, and there was this technique that they talked about that was very prevalently used with The Sixth Sense, right? Where there's a twist at the end that makes you go all the way back to the beginning of the movie and see everything in a whole new light. And to me, Magic is kind of like that. Every new set sends you all the way back to the beginning of Magic and like recontextualizes all that other stuff. And I just think that's amazing, right? Like cards that you may not have played with for 10, 15, 20 years, all of a sudden you're dusting them off out of your box and you're putting them in a deck because of some new card that just came out. So for me, that's the thing. Like I'm at heart probably a deck builder more than anything. I love putting decks together that do cool stuff, something fun. And so that's what brings me joy to Magic is the retextualizing of the old cards with the new cards. I just love it.
One of my favorite things, I mean, I've said this before, one of my favorite things is basically when we can sit there and, like you said, find a card from the ancient days that was trash, and suddenly it's like this card makes this new thing do dumb, stupid stuff that was not
Right.
meant to be done, but it's amazing now. And finally, this card has to, like the example. I mean, the perfect example is not even a casual one. It's like Bazaar of Baghdad and Lion's Eye Diamond, right? Like these cards
Right.
were when they came out, we were like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. And then a few years later, someone comes up with Dredge or whatever, and suddenly it's like, oh, this is broken in half.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, a recent example. Think about. This isn't really a bad card, but like there's that new Sloth from the Fallout set. That's like a 10/10 or something.
I will look.
And it's very expensive, but like it discounts if you have counters, and so
right.
People were using it with Dark Depths. Now, Dark Depths is not a trash card, but like it's Dark Depths is kind of interesting, just using the counters to discount this huge sloth thing, which is just hilarious to me.
Well, yeah, because this huge sloth thing, Lumbering Mega Sloth, for those of you who don't pay attention to every set that's ever come out, is an 8/8 for 10 and 2 green. And it costs 1 less to cast for each counter among players and permanents. And it's got trample, enters battlefield tap, whatever, fine. Dark Depths comes into play with 20 counters, 10 counters. No, it comes to play with 10 counters on it.
10,
and when you remove the counters by paying 3 colorless or I don't know, Vampire Hex Mage or whatever, you
Right.
get a 20/20 indestructible. And so I see that we finally broken Dark Depths. Thespian Sage, you can stay home.
Right.
We've got a real winner now.
Right. Right. It's all about the sloth.
But I remember I tried. Someone tried to use Dark Depths combo against me in EDH, and I was like, "Swords to Plowshares," and they're like,
Right.
"Oh, damn!"
Right.
You can just see the deflation.
That's sad. That's very sad. Well, I had so there's a recent deck that I was putting together that was using. I built a deck around Strong, right? Strong is a commander from Fallout as well, and whenever Strong is dealt damage, it gets 3 +1/+1 counters, and then you get radiation.
Huh?
Are you looking it up?
Yeah, because I'm just I haven't gotten the Fallout decks yet, so I don't actually know what's in there. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I realized that I don't the last precons I can even remember were Commander Masters. So anything after that, I'm just kind of I know I've got them somewhere, but I couldn't tell you what color is Strong.
Green. It's mono green.
Why wouldn't it be green? Strong, right. The Brutish Thespian, 4 green for a 7/7 legendary mutant berserker with ward. In Rage, when it's dealt damage, you get 3 rad counters and put 3 +1/+1 counters on it, and you gain life rather than lose life from Rage. Oh, that suddenly makes it very different.
Right. Huh. So when I saw that card at first, I was like, well, how are there ways to damage Strong, right? So I was thinking of Acorn Catapult, right?
Wait a second. So of course, Mr. Grothama is going to pick another mono green creature that has to damage itself to do something.
Right. But the best card for Strong would be something along the line of Pestilence, right? But
sure.
It's a mono green card. So I ended up landing on Splintering Wind.
Splintering Wind?
Do you remember Splintering Wind?
No, I definitely do not remember Splintering Wind.
So I think it's from Alliances, maybe? Or
Splintering Wind Alliances. 2 green for an enchantment, 2 and a green. Splintering Wind deals 1 damage to target creature. Put a splinter token in play. Treat the token as a 1/1 green creature with flying and Cume upkeep. If it leaves play, it does 1 damage to you and each. What the hell is this card?
Right.
It deals 1 damage to you and each creature you control. So literally,
which is what you want with Strong, right?
Yeah. So you pay 3 green, and you pay basically 3 mana to make plink something for 1. Make a 1/1 token that then dies to do a damage to you and to everything you control.
Right? That's a win.
That is ridiculous. Right. What the hell is this card?
Well, see that should that when I first ran across that, I was like, I got to build this deck now. I gotta dust off the Splintering Wind and throw it in there. And
Splintering Wind.
That's what's great about Commander. And the new cards, right? Strong. If it hadn't been for Strong, I don't think I would have ever thought about putting Splintering Wind.
Yeah, right. Nobody would ever think about using this card in the history of ever. I'm sure some wind was like, okay, I can do this with I don't know, mana doubling or something. Find a way. What a stupid card.
Right.
What the hell?
But that's the beauty of Commander, right? You can always find something cool with these forgotten old cards.
But yeah, this is what bugs me about partner commanders, which I used to be super high on. I used to be super excited about. But partner commanders let you play too many colors and get too much value and just have everything you want. And you might as well just be playing, Prismatic or one of those old 250 color, 250 card decks or whatever. Just like I love that when you're playing a monocolor or two color deck, you have to reach into the dark depths of Magic to find stupid cards that actually do things that are fun. Like
Right.
I think that's one of my favorite things about Commander is that it forces you to really have to find a solution for things. And I
Right.
guess part of that's also my rant against WotC these days. It's like they're just giving us all the answers. Like why? What? Where's the innovation?
Right.
If any card that I can dig up that came out of like I don't know Odyssey or Mercadian Masks or whatever, you can just design one that's better. And then what am I even doing?
Right. Yeah. I really appreciate when when they're when WotC makes cards that reward monocolor decks. Like War Room and
Hmm.
the new Archdruid's Charm like costs 3 green pips. So like, who's going to play it except for a mono green deck? Like I really like that when Wizards does that kind of stuff to help kind of reward that, because otherwise, like you said, what's to incentivize people not to just sort of splash, another color, 2 colors, 3 colors, go 5 colors and just put the best of everything in there. Like there needs to be sort of a counterbalance to that sort of,
But
you
not
know.
counterbalance. Please don't play counterbalance.
No, definitely not counterbalance. Definitely not.
That card is miserable. But yeah, it's like I think that's one of the things I've just always enjoyed about your writing and your works is that you think about cards and their applications in ways that are not aggressively efficient or trying to be the best possible deck there is. You're trying to have the most interesting things happen and the most fun
Right.
things happen. I mean, like I said earlier at the top of the show, the philosophy that's come through in your writing has been a fundamental part of me as a Commander player and as a content creator and everything I do in Magic, in that you guys have taught me how to find the fun and to surface the silliness that is inherent in our format. And
Right.
like, I mean, I love that. I think it's so wild. Like, I like it when they make cards like Grothama, for instance, or
Hmm.
creatures that are just like this. You are going to need to contort yourself into some dumb stuff to make this card do anything at all. But when it
Right.
works, it's going to be the coolest feeling in the world.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the biggest joy I ever have at a Magic table, whether it's playing competitive or EDH or Commander, is when somebody's like, "What does that card do?"
Yeah,
Like
right.
that's my biggest thrill is when somebody has to like, question
It's like
what
I don't
card it
understand what the
is.
hell is going on. What just happened?
Right? Yeah,
Oh
that's the
man.
best. That's like catnip to me, man.
Okay, so can you explain your Grothama deck? Because I've been trying to figure this stupid thing out forever, and this card is just so weird. I'm sure
I think I
that
sent you a Grothama, didn't I? Did
you
I send you
did.
one?
I've got it sitting here on my in my pile of cool things I've gotten from other people. Grothama, for those of you who don't know, is a battle bond rare. It's 3 green for legendary 10/8. 10/8 that
Right,
says
for 5 mana.
other creatures. Yeah, for 5 mana, which is like, oh yeah, sure. These days that would just be fine, right? Like, but
Yeah.
no, battle bond was like other creatures have. Whenever this creature attacks, you may have it fight Grothama. When Grothama leaves the battlefield, each player draws cards equal to the amount of damage dealt to Grothama this turn by sources they control. What the hell? Like, I remember when this card came out and I was just like, what are you even doing with this card? And yet you went and made an EDH deck that's like now your signature deck. Can you
Yeah.
walk me through this? Tell me what this deck does and how it works. Because I can't wrap my head around it.
Well, so the worry about playing a card like this at first glance, right, is that you're worried that someone else is going to deal a bunch of damage to it and draw a bunch of cards, right?
Yeah.
So like in my initial sort of builds, I had a bunch of ways to kind of protect Grothama from dying to damage. Like I had some enchantments that you could I think one was like called Snake Skin, where you can return it to your hand
Mm-hmm.
and regenerate a creature or something like that.
Yeah.
So I had a bunch of cards like that, but it turns out that most people don't want to sacrifice multiple creatures just to kill Grathama and draw cards. Like most people don't kind of
Cowards.
want to do that, right? So then I started realizing I'm the one that's going to be fighting my own Grathama more often. So like I got to switch out some of those protective reactive cards for more kind of a proactive plan
Mm.
with it. It's sort of um, the best part of the deck really is like when you attack with your stuffy doll and fight Grathama, right? So like Grathama does 10 damage to whatever player you've got stuffy doll pointing to.
Oh, because so it's not a replacement. It attacks and fights Grothama at the same time.
Right. Right. Right, because like stuffy doll, a lot of times people just won't attack into a stuffy doll.
No,
Right,
why
it
would
just
you
kind
ever
of
do
sits
that?
there, and so you'll tap it to ping itself and do a point of damage. So it's kind of silly, but like it can attack. It doesn't have defender, so you drop Grathoma and then you attack with your stuffy doll. So
So
probably
stupid.
the best play of that deck revolves around Mossbridge Troll.
Mm.
Okay, so Mossbridge Troll is a 7-drop 5/5, and you can tap up to 10 power of creatures to give it +20/+20. So what you do is you attack with your Mossbridge Troll, and then before in response to declaring it as attacker, you tap Grathama to give it +20/+20. So then it's a 25/25. And then you fight Grathama and draw 25 cards. And usually you're going to be in pretty good shape after that resolves.
And it only costs 5, so you can recast the thing anytime you want. Who cares?
Right? Yeah. And one of the key parts of that particular deck is because it draws cards from Grathama is playing cards like Expiration, so that you can keep making extra land drops. So then it becomes easier to recast your Grathama for more fun. There is another card. Vigor is another MVP.
Vigor is one of my favorite cards.
And it kind of hurts your head sort of figuring out how all the triggers work. So like if you drop Vigor and then you attack with a couple of creatures and Grathama, and then have everybody fight each other, and instead of dealing damage, they get +1. They get +1/+1 counters.
If damage
And so
would
they
be dealt to another creature you control, prevent that damage. 1/1 counter for each 1 damage prevented that way. Right. So
right.
If I have a 2/2 and I attack into Grothama, does no damage. Grothama gets +2/+2, and this 2/2 gets +10/+10.
Yeah,
that's so dumb.
Right, and then the next creature.
But wait, then if they're fighting though, doesn't that kill the Grothama, or they all fight time?
No, because Vigor replaces the damage.
Oh, right. Oh my God. So these things are all just getting bigger, and they're still attacking whatever it is you attacked. So suddenly the dude who was just unblocking, who wasn't going to block this measly 2/2, is now staring down like a very large being.
Right. Yeah. So
this is so dumb.
Yeah,
oh
it's
my God.
It's a hoot. It's definitely a hoot. And the deck has some stuff that kind of cares about high power creatures. Green has a fair number of that kind of stuff. So, I've got stuff like that in there too. Obviously, like the Great Hinge and Galta's in there. Stuff like that. So
you might as well. I mean, so what is like? How do you keep yourself from just overpowering your decks with all the best stuff that comes out of every season?
Well, that's definitely a hard thing to do. I guess I try to keep in mind, like when I see new cards, the first thing I think of is how much am I going to enjoy playing against this card, right? So like if it's too good, I'm probably not going to have a great time playing against it unless it's got a cool flavor or something like that. But like if it's just super efficient and people are throwing in their commander decks, I'll usually go the other direction. Like, and I may not recognize it right away. Like if it's a card that I think, like for instance, I built a Voja deck pretty early during the spoiler season, but then I started playing with it and I'm like, this is really annoying to play against. So I don't know if I want to be that guy who's playing that deck. I mean, no shade to
Yeah.
people that like it, but like I think it's too good, and so I quickly pulled it apart again because it just didn't it wasn't interesting to me, that level of efficiency.
Yeah, that's the thing. I looked at Voja and I got it, and then I mean they've done a handful of commanders like this where I'm like, oh, I was super excited to make this deck, and then you look like Miriam. Miriam is my example for this. Is like, oh man, it makes clones of every dragon I have, and then I
Right,
can just go in and I played it once or twice against other people, and I played against other people's Miriam decks, and I was like, oh, this is actually just miserable. And like
right,
Voja is so good. It's so
right,
stupid that like it doesn't
yeah,
need Ward 3 with all that crap on there.
right.
Like,
No,
are
it
you
does
kidding
not.
me? Um, that card is so absurd that you're like, this is just not like
Yeah, I had the
great. I
exact
won.
same experience with Mirim. I did the exact same thing with Mirim. I built it because I thought it was cool. It was a D&D dragon, you know. I was like, oh,
Exactly
this is so
right.
cool. And then I was like, wow, this is really miserable to play against. I don't think I want to play it anymore.
Yeah, like this is just it's making all my friends feel bad and it's making me feel bad. This
Right.
seems like the antithesis of what I'm looking for, which is part of why I haven't ended up building a dragon deck yet, because all of the dragon commanders are just so extra,
Right.
like just like look, I don't want to just ruin your I mean, I want you to have fun. Like I want my
Right.
opponent to also enjoy the experience of playing.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I've come around to the
It,
fact that sometimes there are cards that you play because they're end of the night cards,
right.
and I think Grothama is just one of them, or not Grothama. I think like Miriam and Friends are just one of those for me.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's basically my one of my uh,
Philosophies.
philosophies. Yeah. It is I look at a card if it, and sometimes it takes a little while to kind of get how miserable it is to play against.
Hmm.
And I just try not to play cards that I find miserable, and just sort of lead by example. I mean, not everybody plays Commander like I do, but I
The
tried to
world would be
bring to
better if they did.
well, I mean, there's so many people playing it nowadays. I think it's really easy to find, sort of your tribe, that
Yeah.
people that like to play Commander like you like to play. Like in the early days, I was a little bit of a gatekeeper, I think, because
Hmm.
I'm like, this is the way the rules committee has sort of laid out. This is the philosophy of Commander, and like you shouldn't do this other stuff. But over time, as the format's gotten bigger, I'm like, if that's the way you like to play and you find some other people that like it too, then have at it and have fun.
Hmm.
But for me personally, i'm not gonna I'm not gonna put Smothering Tithe and Rhystic Study in my deck because I hate playing against those cards.
I mean, I still play Smothering Tithe just because my white decks need the help. Um, I I wish to God that Smothering Tithe had cost one white, white, white instead of three and a white. Make that
Right,
card like that card is awesome, but make it
right,
unsplashable, please.
right. Agreed,
However,
agreed.
that ship has sailed, and now Smothering Tithe is just everywhere. Like I
Right,
don't mind Tithe, and I don't mind Ristic Study. I mind when they're both on the table together. It's like, do you pay the
right.
one now? Do you pay the two now? Oh Jesus Christ! Like, well, whatever. Like I don't know.
Well, and
I
so many people just won't pay the cost, right? They're
well,
like,
that's
yeah, sure,
exactly it. People are just
card,
like, I don't
have
care.
the
Who cares?
treasure, and I'm like, come on, you're giving them such a huge advantage.
Yeah, but like
But
they also look. I mean, in my case, they'll look at my deck and be like, "Okay, look, you're playing like soldier token that blows over with one wrath. You can have 30 treasures. It's fine. Who cares?"
right,
Or like my dedicated treasures deck. Of course, I'm going to put a Smothering Tithe in there. I don't have any dedicated card drawing decks, which is probably why I don't want to deal with like Ristic. I also just Ristic Studies just like I don't play blue, man. I'm not a blue player. I don't want that in my life. Like even my one bluish deck is just like zombies. Like it doesn't play blue for anything but rooftop storm. Um,
right. And zombies aren't going to be sitting there studying the Rhystic, right? That's not really their
no,
their scheme.
but yeah. So, what do you think of this focus on Commander as we kind of bring this home? Like, what do you think of the fact that in this time that you've seen Magic grow, it has gone from being a super niche thing to being now the thrust of the game?
Right. Well, see, I think it might have gone a little too far in that it feels like they're just pushing the format way too hard, and I think to the detriment of more competitive Magic players. You know, like they make cards that are like cards that kind of make competitive Magic feel like Commander in a way. You know, and
Yeah.
they have so many legendary creatures. Like even in uncommon, you know, at the uncommon level, you know, I just feel like, whoa, like, come on now, you can make cool creatures that don't have to be legendary.
Yeah, they
You
could just
know,
be dudes. Remember there
right?
used to
Just
be a time when we would be like, man, I wish this card was legendary. And these days we're like, man, I wish this card wasn't a legend.
right. I agree. Like, okay, if you want to make a super strong, powerful creature, don't make it legendary, and then you won't have a problem with people having it in the command zone and being impossible to kill and get rid of.
Hmm.
You know,
Seriously.
so like, you know, I feel like I think they've gone a little too far in focusing on Commander. I love how popular Commander is these days. I think it's amazing. But I just feel like it's gone a little overboard.
Yeah.
You know,
it's weird because people are like, aren't you happy that Commander is thriving? I'm like, dude, no, I want Magic to thrive. Commander being a part of Magic. Like, one of the things that's weird is like Magic players, like Twitter aside, most Magic players play all kinds of Magic, not just the one format. So we want all the formats to thrive so that we can play more Magic, right? Like, why would I not want? Like, why would I feel good that Vintage is suffering or that Modern is suffering? I want those guys to be happy too. We want this game to thrive, right? Like, I mean,
I do, yeah. I mean, I love watching competitive Magic. I still enjoy watching it.
Seriously,
and I play some Standard on Arena periodically, you know, and have a good time with that.
When the only times I'm really playing Standard or like 60 card formats is because I need more coins to draft with.
Right. I know you're a big draft fan.
Oh God, I love drafting. But you know what, man? It's been an honor to talk to you. And once again, I'm super grateful for all of the work you've given to us as a community for the past 30 whatever years. Like, your writing has inspired not just me, but so many people around the world to explore more of the fun side of Magic. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you for the kind words, and I appreciate you reading. And I mean, I write to be read, right? So like,
right?
I'm glad. I'm always loving hearing people say that they enjoy the work.
So if folks wanted to find you or find your content, where could they go?
So I am the Complete Commander on Twitter, and I have a link tree there that has all my links to various socials. And you can also find me at Star City Games. I've been writing there for 25 years. So
forever.
There's a lot of content over there. And one of the great things about writing about EDH and Commander is even those old articles are interesting, right? Because it's timeless. You know, the cards are timeless.
Exactly. And he puts out an article every week, guys. You really should be reading it. Like, Benny is one of my like must reads basically every week. And of the old guard, you're the only one who's still doing it. So it's like, it's wild to me. Like I love Bruce, I love Alongi, but like, and Stiborski obviously is working inside WotC now, so he's not gonna be writing anymore. So it's nice to
from
see
inside the house.
Yeah, right. Like all of the writing he's doing on Commander is writing to the design team, telling him how to make it better. Stibbs, I love you. You're one of the coolest dudes.
Yeah, me too, man.
Yeah, man. It's like, but it's really great to talk to you. And with that, though, as always, my friends, you can find me at Gearport Gears. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at YouTube every Tuesday. Thanks to my editor, Dan, who's also from SCG. And you can, thanks to Architect and to Quiver for supporting me. You can also support me at my Patreon, patreon.com/ShivanB. And you can see me at Shivam Wheeler Love Magic or at my Dragonlance podcast, Chronicles of Dragonlance. And remember, my friends, it's not magic without the gathering, and we'll see you next time.